Well, my topic, of course, is regarding Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a celebration to honor our mothers with dinners, flowers, gifts, and gatherings. But there is much time in mothering that we are alone. Other family members are away, and mother and new baby, perhaps they are alone together. A new mother has to get used to her baby, and a lot of this is done just between the two of them. Mothers are also alone with toddlers as they're getting older and have left babyhood exactly, and she has to deal with the many chores to keep the home together, to keep it functioning. Mothers deal with the needs of other family members, but she has to deal with many changes of her own in her own body. That's when the support of family and other women are so important. I didn't know that when I was young, that my women friends were going to be a very important resource in my life. So the first woman that I interviewed is named, let's see here, Bridget. She lives in my building. She had a very hard life, but fortunately it got better. She had a very hard life as a young girl and suffered the abuses that often come with that. Her birthday is May 13th, and then she has a daughter with a birthday soon and a grandson very soon. Each one of her children were a very important part of her life. She had four children. Each one gives her something very special. Javier is brilliant and responsible, she says. Quentin taught her patience. Gabrielle, unfortunately, did not survive babyhood, but she still is in Bridget's heart. Xavier gives her a sense of safety also. Bridget still grieves the loss of her daughter. It made Bridget very angry to lose one. She says her mother-in-law, contrary to many mothers-in-law that do not get along in harmony with the family, Bridget's mother-in-law taught her how to open her heart and stay connected. It was a beautiful thing to hear. Her three remaining children all gave her purpose and things that they did things for her that were not done for her previously. She had to give both of them, she had to forgive both of them for the mental abuse that came from the dad. Bridget met a woman named Victoria Forrest, a white woman, who wanted to be her daughter. And so there was a new and wonderful friendship developing. Bridget has said about herself, even in spite of the abuse that she had to endure, that she has a good heart. She started living for herself. Her daughter Naisha and grandson Aiden are contributing much love to her in her life. Aiden is 5 years old, but an old soul, she says. The next person that I talked to was Anna. She started her life in Pennsylvania with her daughter Sarah, an adopted daughter. There were no white babies available at that time, So she and her husband adopted Sarah, who was Black, or perhaps has several different ancestries. And Anna's husband was very accepting of Sarah. It was a mutual decision to adopt this baby. As Sarah grew up, she loved people. At a young age, at age 6 and 7, she liked to, quote, get lost. And what she would do in a department store was walk around and tell other customers that she was lost. And many, of course, many adventures to be told in finding the family again. Sarah facilitated Anna, her stepmother's growth in many different ways. Anna had the mothering of young Sarah to take care of, and then later on, Anna went back to school and got her licensed counseling degree 20 years later. But she learned a lot before she began the counseling training. Anna said she had to learn 2 different racial expectations because of the difference, and a new world for her. Sarah, young Sarah, was accepted readily in Girl Scouts. Anna also, for herself, learned about having a biracial child, learned about white privilege. She has a son-in-law who's Cuban, but he passes for white. As time went on, Anna discovered she had to let go and let her daughter do what was right for Sarah. We all have to learn that as parents at some point. The next person I talked with was Kit. She and I have a common interest, and that is in horses. I want to tell you a little bit about just, these are mothering stories, but not people. Kit said that she had a mother cat, a barn cat, and it had kittens, but it found a baby rabbit and added this little rabbit to her litter of kittens, and it nursed right along with the kittens, the baby rabbit and the kits. Now about Kit's story, she was 29, wanting a child, finally became pregnant at 31, and she was in the hospital for the birth, and she was given an epidural at about the middle of her back, and it was supposed to numb the part of the body from the waist down, but it was put too high up, much too high. And the next thing that Kit knew, she was up on the ceiling. Her consciousness was up on the ceiling, and she was looking down at her own body. She couldn't communicate, but she could think for what she wanted to say. And knowing that, and while she was disconnected from her body, but watching everything that was going on, she knew she didn't have a pulse. There was conversation going on among the doctors. She was up on the ceiling, and she said, "I want this baby." And she was willing herself to not die. She could have just let go. She was aware of that. But she kept her consciousness, came back to consciousness, and said, just was very, very clear she wanted that baby. It was very quiet and peaceful up there when she was disconnected, and she said, "I'm not going." She resisted and came back and now has a grandchild from the daughter that was saved, who is now 45. I heard about people leaving their bodies and talking about it, but this is the first time I'd been with someone who could tell me what it was like. Now I'm going to tell you my conversation with Ruth Harrison. She has the 3 boys. They're all different personalities. She learned very early from her family she did not want discord. And when you have 3 children and one is getting a birthday present or several, the little ones who are not having a birthday will want part of the loot, the goodies that come. So what she did was give the birthday boy a gift and gifts to the other 2. When there were 3 children, the other 2 got gifts as well. So there was not competition and struggling. Because I remember wrecking something that was my sister's. Well, I don't remember. My mother told me, and I remembered what my mother said, that I was hitting my sister through the bars of her crib with a stuffed toy. Anyway, I'm not proud of that, but my sister was not injured. And many years later, Mumu, their daughter, Carolina, felt very cared for by her brother. She was nurtured by these big boys. Such a nice thing to hear. She is protected and loved by the older brothers. Ruth taught her children that they had a choice. I didn't know when I was a child that I had a choice. I just had my own annoyances and my grievances, and I just wanted everything to be brought to justice. But I learned way later that I have a choice. I don't have to always want justice and to have my grievances settled. It took a long time to learn that. Now, let's see, I'm going to tell you about my family. I was born in 1932, and in those days, babies were whisked away, and I did not meet my mother, and she didn't meet me for 3 days. And mother told me that when I was brought into her, my forehead was just a mass of wrinkles. Like, what is this? What am I got myself into? And it took me a long time to be comfortable that I was in a different place and not comfortable. Now, my dad, on the other hand, was very pleased to have a daughter, but 2 daughters actually, as it came to be. And even though my mother didn't want children, she had a science background. And so what she did was throw herself into the upbringing of this child. And we had the best of everything in terms of the best food and vitamins. And poor Helen, my sister, had a lot of allergies, and so a lot of attention was given to her. We stayed in different places where it was clear and dry in Southern California, so that Helen wouldn't be so tormented with allergies. Yes, my mother just threw herself into the business of being a mother, and she learned about diets for us, mostly for Helen, and what vaccinations and shots we should have. She wanted a boy. She did not want girls. So she had 2 of them. Just the way it worked out. Excuse me a moment while I check through this. I talked to Catherine. It's a biracial marriage, and I expected to hear about conflict, about insults, and I had expectations of what I was going to hear. But I was surprised how peaceful and how agreeable the marriage was in connection with the outside world. Catherine said that she did quite well. They did well as a couple here, as a mixed marriage in Virginia. When they traveled around the country, so some of the worst prejudice that they experienced was in Ohio, of all places. Catherine grew up in a rural area with chickens. Jehovah's Witnesses was forced on her, but fortunately, that was behind her. She doesn't have to deal with that now. And has three children, several years apart, and that family is doing well as a mixed race family. Things have gotten better in this world about loving children, having them with you. Just, it's so different because when I was born, it was like babies and children were another race of people to be handled and separated. And nowadays, it's just babies and parents and children and siblings can be together. And I am so pleased that that's the case. And that's all I have to say.